Renee Knapp, current County Council member at large for Frederick County and candidate for County Council at large again this year. Thank you for doing this. Renee, what's your passion?
My passion, aside from the county council, I'd say in my personal life, probably my family is my passion. But on the council, what I've found is advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves, people who feel marginalized, vulnerable populations. I kind of came to that work through my son, who is an adult with special needs. And so I've had a variety of experiences that I think prepared me to want to run for public office. I see people, groups in the community that either don't have the time or the access or the resources to really advocate for themselves, and that's kind of what drew me to this work.
Yeah, I certainly think that the job of our elected officials should be a lobbyist for the people, right? Like, I mean, all these companies and corporations and even unions and stuff, they all have lobbyists that they're paying to go advocate for what they believe. But who is the citizen advocate, right? Most people don't have the time to show up at 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and then again on Tuesday and then on Thursday and then on Friday, just all these meetings. So it really is incumbent upon our elected officials to be that representation. How different was it being in office than you expected?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, people definitely, I don't like to say caregiver. I was more of a support system for my son. Mm-hmm. He's on the autism spectrum, and as he got older, you become more of a supporter and a manager, not so much like caregiving in a day-to-day basis, but. I was really in the community, not a vocal person, somebody who you'd see in the store, you'd see at Home Depot or something like that. But now I have this platform, and that's taken a little bit of getting used to. Even though I really, I campaigned really hard to get that platform. That's been a big difference. That and the pace of the job. The pace is there's a lot going on every day. There are issues that come before the council all the time. And sort of making sure there's time for yourself and time for all the issues. I'd say that's probably the biggest adjustment, the sort of the pace of the job.
The biggest adjustment for me in pace is whenever I hear Jerry Donald rattle off like amendments or things that you guys need to go through, and he's like HB 135. I've never heard anybody read anything faster in my entire life. That's the
Yeah, you have to be prepared every week. I mean, just for the routine of the job, to make sure that you're doing your due diligence with making sure you review the agenda, making sure you're looking at all the amendments, and you're meeting with different stakeholders, community concerns. All of that, and there are events that we go to be visible in the community, because we should be visible in the community and accessible to the community. So I'd say the pace, the pace is probably the biggest change.
So accessibility, great. One of the things that's been kind of a theme of these conversations has been that so often something will happen in the community, whether it's something being built or a change, and when the bulldozers show up next door, everyone runs to City Hall, or in your case to Winchester Hall, and they say, whoa, what's happening here? And I know that the county government and the city government and everyone, I know that they're all following the law, right? Meaning you put up a sign and you put out a post and you put it in the newspaper, and everyone kind of tried to tell everybody what's going on, but often it's so intangible, that zoning board of appeals meeting that happens 3 years before something. So how do you have this conversation with people that are showing up where they're afraid of something or they're worried about something, but it's kind of like, I'm going to use the phrase too late, right? Because the decision that gave the permit to that building that's going up or whatever it would be happened 6 months ago, a year ago.
Sure.
And sometimes in prior administrations, like the people, nobody sitting here even took that vote.
Absolutely.
How do you have that conversation with people?
That's a great issue. I mean, and that's exactly what we're experiencing in Adamstown. I'm a resident of Adamstown, and the data center complex was approved before I took office. And people are understandably, just as we were saying a few minutes ago, people don't have the time to follow this all the time, every day, and they don't know where to look. Some people don't even get the paper anymore. I get the newspaper. Do I turn to the classified ads and the public notices every single day? No, I don't. So communication is something I've definitely heard. It's a continuing theme I've heard in these conversations and other conversations. How do we communicate better with the community and not just follow the letter of the law? And there's nobody's, not followed any procedures. I'm not suggesting that. But in 2026, can't we come up with a better system of outreach where we're not depending on signs that are smaller than the campaign signs that I'm putting up right now in there? And it's hard to read what's going on, and that does leave the community just caught off guard. And with a major change like what we're talking about with zoning, some zoning changes are not that much of an impact. Some have had. It's hard to even communicate. People in the Adamstown area understand it, the level of impact that's been going on. So I think that we need to certainly look at technology. How can we leverage technology to make sure that we're reaching every resident and mail? I know that mail is not always efficient, but I feel like we have to get together and come up with different strategies to communicate better.
I think some of the responsibility lies on the citizenry, right? The residents, that we should be paying attention. I've oft repeated this story of when I was growing up in Ballinger Creek, because I grew up near there in Kingsbrook, and we had these beautiful fields behind our house that are all houses now. And
Right.
my father, when I was young, he would say, "Hey, isn't this beautiful?" Don't get used to it, So there is a little bit on us, but at the same time, to your point, we don't. I hope there's nothing in the classifieds of the Frederick News Post that I should be looking at, because I don't ever get there. So I do wonder what's hiding in there. But
That's where the public notices are like after all the classified ads.
So that isn't the solution, and I know that a Facebook post isn't the solution either. So part of it, I think, to me, and I love your thoughts on this, is there's no like town square, right? That I feel like. And I'm a big fan of history, and I've read a lot about how we got here as a country, and it all kind of started in pubs and taverns where people would gather and talk, or churches and community centers where they would gather and talk about what's going on, and everyone knew everything was going on because there was this central gathering place. And I know that social media is trying to be that.
Yes.
While destroying everything about humanity, but it's not that, because obviously there's a corporate interest on attention, and so that can't be the actual solution as some some Facebook group, right? So to me, it's the breakdown of that's why we don't really know what's happening, because there is none of that collective gathering, and there's no shared experience that's happening. So I guess my question is we're just too far gone?
There's a lot of trust, I think, that's been broken in that process that you're talking about, in terms of, I've seen skepticism from let's take the data center project with there's distrust of the developers, there's distrust of the government because of the perceived lack of communication that we're talking about, and it's very difficult to get that once it's lost.
Sure.
So I think, I don't know where the space with what you're talking about would be, but I think it's important for community members and stakeholders and the government all to sort of, there has to be a better way to communicate, because otherwise I don't believe we're too far gone. I don't, because I have enough conversations with people in smaller groups and different community members and stakeholders in the area. It seems to be when it gets to be a larger group, people have felt unseen and unheard, and they're upset, and they rightfully want an outlet for that frustration. And I've certainly heard that. I'm trying to figure out, again, what you're saying, what's the space for that? Is it online? Is it physical? Is it a newsletter? Well, then you have to get people to sign up for the newsletter.
Or if open it when it gets in their email,
or if it's an event or then you have to sign up for the event and plan the event. So yeah, we have to keep trying. I know that, and we have to keep maybe reaching out to the community and seeing what would be more meaningful for them, how we can update those notification regulations. Some of them are only, I think, required by the state. And so I think that's another, if we were to get more outreach there.
It's also the good things, right? And I'm sorry to all the people that watch this because I bring it up every single time, that transit's free in Frederick County.
Yes.
Transit's free. And every single time I bring this up because it is, I'm flabbergasted by the amount of people that I know that are very plugged in to the community that don't know that. And so it's also the good things that don't really permeate out into the community and we don't know about them. And I know that this is I think it's because of the onslaught of information that we just as humans cannot handle.
That's
the
a great
amount
point.
of information that is being bombarded at us. You're driving around, you have all of the audio going on, whether you're the radio or you're listening to a podcast or music, whatever. You have 1,000 signs. You have I say this about campaign signs where, you have to have them around, but they're really just for the candidate and their ego. Because how many realtor signs did you pass on your way here?
Sure.
No idea, right? Because I'm not paying attention to that thing. And so it's just noise, and it's just this background hum. And then you get on the internet, and it is 3 seconds at a time, 10 seconds at a time, just new clip, new clip, new clip, new clip, new clip. And then they're designing spaces where you don't even click on the next one; it just shows up, right? And you're stuck in the space. And how can we as humans?
And that's when you've only been maybe awake for an hour.
Yeah, you haven't even had coffee yet.
Right.
And you're already received more information than somebody 50, 60 years ago did all week.
Right. And they did they did read the paper every day. I totally agree with you. I don't know how we can sort of navigate that and make sure that we're reaching everybody, but I do think people are overloaded with everything that they have to do. And so we're trying to figure out a way to reach them with the good news that you're talking about. I mean, passing the legislation to make transit fare free I co-sponsored that with Councilmember Cavante Duckett, and that was also there was advocacy done with that with former city council member Kelly Russell. Mm-hmm. That's one of the most things that I'm most proud of in my first term, because that's a huge that's a huge thing for seniors in our community, for persons with disabilities. And if you've seen the transit system, in the last few years, the folks at Transit have just elevated the public transit system experience. Mm-hmm. You can see the bus shelters, and you can see the new buses, and there's no stigma, I think, for riding the bus. People are encouraged to ride the bus. And I hear sometimes people say, well, I don't ride the bus. Why do I need the bus? Well, to that I say, you don't need the bus until you need the bus. Mm-hmm. And it's a community service that we can all benefit from. And I agree with you. It's one of the major achievements, I think, of this council.
But what percentage of people know about it, right?
And especially
10%?
Yeah.
If I think I'm being generous, right? 15%. And so I don't know. So
there are some people there. There was a few people who use transit to for their job in Brunswick. There's rural transit that goes out to Brunswick, and Emmitsburg and Jefferson, and they are utilized. Now that we have the dedicated funding for that, hopefully we can, beyond keeping the system fare free, we can look at how do we push out rural transit into the eastern part of the county and make it really accessible to people.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned you live in Adamstown. So tell me your story. How did you get to Adamstown?
Sure. So I was not born in Frederick County. I was born in New York State, and my family moved to Frederick County when I was 4 years old. We moved to Middletown, and I grew up in Middletown Valley. I graduated from Middletown High. And after college, I graduated from high school at Middletown, and I went to Mount St. Mary's University for 1 year, and I was a political science major. And I became very disenchanted with political science, and I decided to transfer to Towson State University and be a theater major. I had been in the first class of I think they call it the Academy of Fine Arts now, at Governor Thomas Johnson, but at the time it was called the Visual and Performing Arts program, and I was in the theater program there. And so I went to Towson State University, and
I just went and saw North Frederick Elementary do their in conjunction with that at TJ, and I love that the elementary school kids are able to do on the big stage. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it really feels like a full production for them. So
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So no problem. So I went to Towson State for about 3 years, and it's kind of very integral to my story. In my junior year of college, my now husband and I, my husband will be married 36 years this summer. We found out that we were expecting our son. So I left college. I thought that I would only be gone, maybe 5 years max. And it turned out to be much longer. I left college for a long time because of my son and his special needs. My husband and I got married, and we moved back to Frederick. I brought him back here in 1994, and we moved to Ballinger Creek.
Okay.
We lived in Ballinger Creek for about 14 years, and then about 18 years ago, we moved to Adamstown, and love it in Adamstown. This was before all of the changes. It's a beautiful place, but we understood that there was industrial areas. East Alco was still operational at that time.
Aluminum smelting plant.
Yeah,
when I was a kid.
And there's a factory. Transtech is in the middle of town, so we kind of knew we knew the area and what to expect there, and so that's sort of how we ended up in Adamstown. We lived there. I'm trying to think of how sort of I got into running for county council.
Yeah, it's one of my, for people who are happy in life and, going along and things, I know there's always struggle and not everything's perfect, but if you're generally having a good life, why would you subject yourself to this?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm young and dumb and like I want to change the world and, that's my involvement, but like why would anybody who doesn't need to,
I think I had some really informative experiences that I didn't realize how they were going to shape what I wanted to do later on in life. After I have 2 children, my son's 35. He lives with us. We have a daughter. She lives in New Mexico. She graduated from Tuscarora High. But as I got my son became more independent, and I had more time on my hands. And I thought, I became a mom at a young age.
Yeah.
So I was looking at, I was only in my early 50s, and I thought, what do I want to do with this next chapter? What do I want that to mean in my life? And because of my experiences with my son, I'll back it up and do, so one experience. My husband and I, so we found out we were expecting our son, and we decided we wanted to get married. This was a long time ago. This was in the early 90s. And when we got married, I lost my health insurance because I could no longer be carried on my father's policy. And my husband, who had only recently graduated from college himself, did not have a job and did not have insurance either. So I had to apply for and use public assistance to have for the care, prenatal care, and to have my son. And that experience, I received excellent care. Wouldn't want to suggest otherwise. But I definitely saw in my experiences waiting, just in the waiting room, you talk to people and you hear about their experiences, and you can feel the experience of somebody who is going through the system and depending on medical assistance to make sure that you have a healthy baby and a healthy start, have that baby have a healthy start in life. And so, that's one of the experiences that kind of formed my early, sensibilities about things. And then secondly, one of the things I'm proud of about what I did, I went back in my 40s, I went back and I finished my bachelor's degree at the Mount St. Mary's evening program. And I decided to get a degree in criminal justice because the evening program, you could do criminal justice or business or education. I picked criminal justice and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a background investigator. That sounds really cool. It just didn't work out with our schedules. My son still needed a lot of support. That's a job where you have a lot of travel and your time's not really your own.
Yeah.
So I took a job as a loss prevention investigator. And for 6 months, I did this job. I was really good at the background investigating part. That part was fun. I was really good at that. But to be successful in that job, you have to apprehend shoplifters.
Yeah.
And that I was not so successful at. That created a lot of anxiety for me, and I just wasn't successful at that. And that's sort of a job where you have to pay your dues. And I knew that it wasn't going to ultimately be successful. But in the meantime, what the experience I gathered there was when I got a job at I'm not going to say the name of the store, but it's like a retail store, I would say discount retail store.
Sure.
And the employees that were working there, you get to know the employees. A lot of them were struggling with minimum wage jobs. This was before they raised the minimum wage to even now, which is not really, feasible to really live on. And the manager I'd see the manager and they would ask an employee, can you come in and work, 4 or 5 hours tonight, right? And the person would say no, the person who's, making minimum wage. And then the manager would kind of say to me, like, well, I'm offering them more hours. Why can't they get into work? You would think they would want to work. But when you talk to the employees, some of them didn't have the transportation to get just turn around and say, okay, yeah, I'll change my schedule around and work that night. Or their childcare is an issue. So
in exchange for, that 5 hours at $7, but you're talking
exactly.
$45.
Right.
Like that's like it's going to cost them more than that $45 for the babysitter or to get there.
Yeah. So that's another sort of experience that informed me about the needs of the community, the needs of people. So that's sort of during the pandemic, I kind of thought, well, what do I want to do? What do I want the next chapter to look like? I had worked with other candidates, other Democratic candidates for office. I'd gotten involved in local politics that way in clubs, and I'd worked on other campaigns and worked in the party generally. Before that, I would have thought, oh, not me. Me. Well, what do I bring? What would I bring to the county council? I don't have a big, my resume is pretty thin. But I thought, why not me? We need to have people different, representing different points of view. One of the things that I love the most about the county council is the fact that we are all citizen legislators, and we're all coming from very different points in our life, especially this council, right? There's a range. There's 4 generations.
Yeah.
Different, there's diversity on the county council, and I think that's a good thing. So I think however you get to the county council, to me, it's kind of like Survivor. You belong there. You got here. The people want you there. So
yeah, I think Mason was 19 when he got elected and took his seat. And it's such a such a different life experience. I think you hit it right there that. What does somebody bring to the council? And so often we want business owners, or we want somebody that was, they were a city council member and now they're a county council member, or veterans, or, well, what I want is like somebody who's like been a renter, or somebody who's needed assistance, or somebody who needed the help of nonprofits. And because to me, it is the lived experience of most of the people that are in that, chain of authority above us. You go president on down. Like, how many of them are renters? Mm-hmm. And the answer is probably 0. Mm-hmm. Maybe, depending on where you are, you've got one, in that line that's not living the experience of what so many people are. And I know that Frederick County is a predominantly owner-occupied community, right? So certainly we have 100,000 people that are not in that situation. But we also have 100,000 people that are renters and are living in, or they're like 2-3 families in a home. And back to the point about they don't have a voice because there's no one that I'm certainly people can empathize with them. They can go and they can listen and they can try to understand what it is. But until you until you are turning down that shift because that $45 is inaccessible to you. You need that $45,
Right.
but you can't even get it because of the barriers. It's hard for me to look at, and again, I think that people really try, and I really think,
Sure.
especially here locally, that there's a lot of people that really care a
Absolutely.
lot about it in the city and the county. But it is still not a native experience for any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we get more of their voices heard? Because again, they can't show up, right? Because the same reason they can't take that shift for 4 hours in the afternoon, they also can't go to the council meeting in that afternoon, So maybe they could write something or submit something in writing, with whatever time they possibly know. But so many people are they're drowning all the time. And I see government as part of its function is to organize the resources that we have in a way that makes and creates opportunity for people. Is this something that is it just we need federal dollars to do this? I mean, is the county doing this? Can the county do this?
I think the county does. The county does a lot. Frederick County is really well known for the partnership between the nonprofit organizations and the county, but also the county they've got the Division of Family Services, the Department of Social Services, the Health Department. I think there's lots of work being done, and I think I see it as my responsibility to make sure when we vote on the council and we discuss issues, especially like what's the budget, what's going on right now, is to make sure it's too easy to look at. Well, this program right here is a little. Do we really need that? That's $300,000. Do we need that? That'll mean a lot to the people who are benefiting from that program. So I see that as my role as a real advocate for the social safety net in the county, and to make sure that like we said before, those people have a voice, and when it's time to look at the budget, that there's advocacy there to make sure that they're included.
It's so painful to me to think about how many decisions we have to make that are dollar decisions. I used to, back when Mike Huff was Senator Mike Huff, the biggest, I don't want to say argument, biggest disagreement we had was about a needle exchange program where, his argument at the time, and I don't know what his argument is now, but his argument at the time was this simply costs too much, that it's such a tiny set of the population, and we're using tax dollars, and this was the thought. And in my brain it was I don't care. I don't care if it's $10 million. You're talking about human beings and their lives. But and I don't even want to, but if we have to talk about the math, which again I don't think should be the point should be empathy towards human beings, and we should be doing everything we can. That's my little bit of democratic socialism coming in. But it does actually monetarily help us. That when you have people, and this is the same argument about education, that the more educated the children are, the more access to opportunity they will have, the more successful they will have, the more they will have resources that will then get injected back into the community. So they're going to have a better job, they're going to have a couple extra dollars, and then they're going to go use it at a shop in town. It's a return on investment over and over and over and over again. And there seems to me to be this, maybe it's a very vocal minority, but it seems to be that there's a ton of people in Frederick County that are just so focused on, we're just wasting our money everywhere. I'm assuming you don't believe that. Because you took these votes, but again, what do you say to those people that say that just they show up and go, well, every dollar you spend it's bad because the government's spending it?
If there's one thing that I have learned, as I was a new council member 4 years ago, and in my experience up until now, there are not many decisions that we make that we touch that don't have some level of if you do something here, something happens over here. And that is just something that you have to weigh with every decision. And I appreciate what the arguments that have been made about Property taxes. Absolutely. I mean, the property taxes are rising. That's another expense that if you're living on the edge, when you're living on on the edge, and $100 here, $200 there can make the difference. And I completely appreciate that. So we do have to find the balance of, how can we keep property taxes reasonable, and also deliver the services that people need in the county. And people don't know when you might need those services. Senior services is an area where the need is really growing, and we want to be able to.
It is. I mean, we are the population. If you look at that graph, that population bubble is just traveling farther and farther to the right, where we're going to have so many people that should be able to enjoy a retirement and should be able to live the life that they have earned after all these years of putting out effort, but that also means that they're no longer going to be investing back into, right? So how do we prepare? It seems to be a money thing, that it's like, if we could just, find, I don't know, the Spanish fleet's gold happened to come up Carroll Creek, 800 years ago, like that would be great.
Yeah.
But
well, I think the efforts are that's kind of the basis for, and that's why we're working to raise the commercial tax base in Frederick County, because otherwise I don't see how the math is eventually going to catch up with us, and not the math will catch up with the rural couple living in Myersville, or somebody who on Route 40 who's having in moderate to low income. It's going to catch up. So we're trying to make sure to get that commercial tax base up so that we can perhaps deliver property tax relief to our residents, and also make sure that we're not having to go ask for a residential tax increase every time that that group moves forward, and more services are needed, and more services are needed, and we have to maintain the infrastructure that we already have. We're still a growing county. There's so many sort of balls in the air in Frederick County that I think we're doing a good job. There's always room for improvement, but there's a lot going on, and it's been going on since I was a child in Middletown. I remember we lived in Fountaindale North, and the people in Fountaindale South, well, those were the new modern homes, and now they're 40-year-old homes. Yeah. So not a new, it's just the conversation, just every 10 years, sort of the same conversation.
There's this idea that the only way we have a better future is if people, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that if people plant trees that the shade of which they'll never sit under, right? Mm-hmm. And a big, I think I mentioned, I was talking this with Brad during our conversation about, there's so many people who they've kind of made it, meaning they have a home, they own the home, and certainly with the economy where it is, and nobody's jetting off to the Caribbean every week now, but they're okay, right? There's some level of financial security, stability in their life, and they then look, and I kind of toy at the idea. I feel like Zillow, like the Frederick County, I don't believe in censorship, but if I could snap my fingers, that if you were in Frederick County, that you weren't allowed to go to the Zillow website and look at this fictional number that is a property value that if you tried to sell it, well, where would you move, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you're not moving somewhere else in Frederick County. So it doesn't really mean anything, but it does mean something with taxes, right? So as our property values go up, we're paying more in taxes, the dollar amount going out, even when you guys keep the rate the same, right? This is why I think you have to, by law, say it is a tax increase, even though the rate didn't change.
Yes.
But we're seeing that rate go up. It's costing us more out of our pockets. But people seem to want their value of their property to keep going up. So the gap between the people that have access to that and don't have access is getting greater. At the same time, the people that do are complaining about that cost. Now, if I may take a point of personal privilege, I think it goes back to the fact that in Frederick County, we cannot charge commercial properties different than residential properties, mm-hmm. which again, back to things that previous boards did. This was the county commissioners, Blaine Young and Billy Shreve and Kirby DeLauder, those years, they removed that ability. And we have to go back to the state to get it done. And so we can't do that here. But to me, that is the biggest. Like, I think that Walmart should pay more per square foot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that that's definitely something we need to take a look at, and I think it's one of the tools that we have to sort of raise the commercial tax base. I think we need to your point about people not wanting their properties to change or the areas around their property to change, I have heard in different iterations, throughout my entire, most of my life in Frederick County, this desire, and I get it. I mean, this is a great place to live, right?
Yeah.
I brought my husband back here to raise our family. I don't want to live anywhere else.
Me too.
But at the same time, there's not a thing that we can do to freeze where Frederick County is. Frederick was really great in 1986. Frederick was really great in 1996, and Frederick was really great in 2006. But time keeps marching on, and even if you could, let's freeze everything. Let's freeze the tax rate. Let's stop. Let's not build another thing. Let's not. That doesn't change. Frederick County does not exist in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. We are 50 miles away from Baltimore. We are 40 miles away from Washington, D.C. We are 40 miles away now from Ashburn, Virginia, another economic hub. So those pressures are going to continue to be put upon Frederick County, and that's why when you stop building, then your house goes up to, really, there's some really
now
high
you got
amounts
$1 billion house
now in Frederick County, and that is, it's on paper, but it is wealth for that household. So it's hard to get people to. I found it's difficult for people to understand that, because they think that if we just stop and there's a way that we can just freeze and stay the same, and that's just not possible. So in that case, so then somebody moves and they move to a new home in one of the newer areas of the county, and it's an expensive home. Then the person who lives in Myersville or Brunswick or Union Bridge or something like that, their property values keep going up too. So yeah, we have to find a way to we have to acknowledge that we're all kind of all in this together, and if we don't have some other tax base, which is the commercial tax base, because that's either it's residential or commercial, how can we reasonably add to the commercial tax base? What you're suggesting is a reasonable suggestion. We're looking at adding, reasonable amounts of land so that we can create more businesses. There can be more business development in Frederick County to take the pressure off of the residents. And of course, the data center complex is generating and going to generate a large amount of revenue. But we have to be realistic. If you want to stay in Frederick County, we have to make a Frederick County that's going to work for everybody, for our new residents, for our longtime residents, and that does not mean just trying to, throw the switch and not change anything, because it just doesn't work.
Well, certainly, I think in the business community, they would agree with you that we need new customers, and we need people to show up, and business is an ever evolving and growing thing, and you invest capital and then you sell things to get back to to pay your debt service and these things, but I also think that it is from the arts perspective and from the kind of the community itself, that an amazing thing about Frederick is how it's new people, mm-hmm. and it's new ideas, and just people are showing up from all over, mostly coming from Montgomery and the county, coming up to us, and I'm meeting wonderful new people, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and it is this not in my backyard thing is really a tough thing to get over, because people don't like change, no matter what it is.
They do not.
It really doesn't. Even if somehow I can convince somebody it's a benefit to them, it's still not what I was doing yesterday, and I liked and I was comfortable when I was doing yesterday. And it is certainly politically dangerous to be on the front of any of these kind of changes. And I know that you pay not just the political price, but just the personal price of people calling you evil and all these things that can happen when you kind of have a disagreement with somebody. But you entered politics after the Trump change, right? I'm saying you ran for office after, right?
Yes.
But you entered office after, but you were involved in politics prior. How different is it, I guess, and I've been kind of asking people this question, is it the social media change or is it Trump? You know what I mean? Because I try to remember like the Jan Gardner years back when she was as a county commissioner. And there was certainly very differences of opinions.
Oh, yes.
But it didn't seem to me that people were driving around town, spray painting middle fingers on campaign signs. Maybe they did, and I just didn't see it back then. But it seems that the vitriol has really increased. So I guess I'm interested in your perspective because you've been involved for so long. But I am interested, as I said, you got elected kind of into the world. So your entire period of being, after COVID, it was quite an exciting time to be in public office. So I'm just interested in your perspective on that kind of.
I think a lot of it has to do with. I do believe a lot of it has to do with social media. I'm grateful that my two kids, my daughter, she'll be 30 this year. She was sort of on that. She was it was starting to be a thing when she was younger. I don't know how parents deal with it right now. I see comments that middle-aged people and older say to each other every day. And I can't imagine how difficult it is to try and help a child navigate that environment. It's definitely, I think people feel emboldened, and it comes out of their feeling not being heard. Some people don't feel heard. Some people use it as a tool to divide. I think both things are true. But I do think that that social media has a lot to do with it, and I think that Trump probably capitalized on that, and like as others did. I think many people have. So I think it has to do with social media, and there are times
that he more kind of rode the wave.
Oh yeah, and knew how to, and definitely knew and knows how to make the most of it. For good, for better or for worse. I have conversations with people. Some people come up to me and. My interaction with them in person would be very different than what the interaction online would be. People feel emboldened to say things I think that they would never actually say to somebody's face,
yes.
which is understandable and disappointing at the same time.
I've had people say just horrific things about me online.
Yeah.
And then they come into WAGs and they sit down.
Hey, how you doing?
I serve a beer
yeah.
and I talk to them.
And you're like, what are we doing here?
I thought you hated me.
Exactly.
But in person it's not like that, which again goes back to that like semi-anonymity of that social media.
And I don't always know how to navigate that because when somebody say somebody's approaching me and I've seen something online, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen here? And they'll say, hey,
go, hi, council member, and they just move on. And
hi, how you doing? Or sometimes people do come up and express their frustrations with me, and I get that. I mean, and I also try and keep in mind. People have, and I fully admit and support, I'm a public figure, and people have First Amendment rights to say whatever they want to me or about me online.
Yeah, you chose this on some level.
I get that. But at the same time, like I said, I think, does it cross a line? I don't know. I'll let others judge that if it crosses a line into something, darker. I think a lot of people have those questions.
It is the right to say whatever you want. It's just so foundationally important to all the other laws and the way that we interact, and just, it's just that your right to do or say anything. I think the phrase is that your right to punch me in the nose ends at the tip of my nose. Right.
Oh,
so you can hit me all you want as long as you don't touch me. Right.
Yeah.
So everything that happens between your whatever you want to be, anger or confusion or frustration,
Mm-hmm.
and you're towards me is great as long as you don't harm me. And it's, unfortunately, words do harm, but we can't. It is a slope that we cannot go down, because as soon as you start saying, well, those words
Right.
were too much.
Right.
Well, then that can be used by a fascist government,
Sure.
or people that we don't, to then restrict
Yeah.
speech that isn't violent speech.
Right.
And
And thought police. You don't want to have thought police
Correct.
either. You want to, we live in a free society, and that's very important. That doesn't mean that I'm not. We're all people. We get our feelings hurt. We get apprehensive about going certain places because of what things that people say. But I would never, ever. I mean, when you run for office, you swear an oath to the Constitution, and that's part of the Constitution.
I don't want all this whole thing to just be, how much I'm upset with social media, but it's also there in society now is this creation of like silos.
Mm-hmm.
I think back, I was on a panel. It was a civility and politics panel that we had at the library back in like 2015, 2014. So I mean, this is pre any of the craziness that is today. And that's so 10 years ago, I said this exact same thing, that we're creating these silos where it used to be, if I really disagreed with you, I could anti-socially come to you in front of everybody and yell at you and scream at you or whatever it would be. But in order to find other people that agreed with me, I would have to like one or two, where do you find these people?
Mm-hmm.
But now you can just go find a group of people online, and you have permanent, forever, 24/7 access to a group of people that agree exactly with what you believe and will reinforce your then belief system. And it becomes this tribe, this teams thing, where it's like, well, if you're on that team and you're on that team, well, there's no cross whatsoever.
Right.
And maybe there are some deep federal, United States kind of things that we should have camps and teams that fight. But but locally, it seems to me more damaging to shut off information from the other team. I don't believe that, and I'll be very clear here. There are certain things that I've advocated for, like, for example, the recognition of children and their identities, and the I don't want the erasure that happens by some people that want to say that transgender youth, et cetera, are again, and this is my belief system, that we should be accepting of people, and I really think that there's a lot of pain that's caused by that. So I don't accept that behavior. But if you think that, not you, the royal you, if you think that this building should be 8 stories tall, and I think it should be 6 stories tall, that is not a teams thing to me. That is let's navigate through this civilly. And I don't know where can you have those conversations?
I've participated I think it was a few years back in a similar sort of, let's get this group together, let's get the right and the left together and see if we can have some civil conversations. And I came away, I was sitting in the back, and I heard people behind me kind of like snickering a little bit, like, this is dumb. And I'm thinking, well, why are you here if you think
Certainly,
that?
Yes.
But then also, when we get together to have those conversations, is the first thing that we should talk about our differences. Maybe we should talk about what kind of, what's your favorite band? What's your favorite restaurant? There's a lot of things that we have in common, and I've worked now with Democrats, and I work with Republicans. And when you want to be a legislator, we're county legislators, it's really hard to get anything done if you're just like, well, it's my way or the highway, that's it. You can sit there for a long time, and maybe some people will come to your way of thinking, and maybe they won't. And if that's how you want to do business, that's fine. But I think we always go for the differences instead of recognizing there are some things that we're just not going to agree on. And that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make me a bad person. Let's focus on, we can have a productive conversation if, I know about your dog is ill, or everybody's my water heater blew up. Everybody has those problems, those human problems.
Yeah.
And if we can talk to each other more like that, then the other stuff, it kind of wears off the edges a little bit, I think. That's been my experience.
So two things. One is that I call it the agreement sandwich. So this is I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody about any topic whatsoever, as long as they agree to the agreement sandwich, which is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find something we agree about, and then we can have the knockout, drag-out fight about the topic that we very much disagree. And then at the end, we have to find something else we agree on. So if they are willing to go through that process with me, then I'll talk to anybody. But if they're not willing to go through that process with me, I don't want to have that conversation, because it's not. I don't want to just argue about. Plus, I think I'm right, so I don't. Why would I waste my time? Not just. But it's. I think that finding those points of agreement are probably the most important thing that we can be doing. It is it is certainly, again, a sad state of affairs that we are like this, but. A little bit of me has some hope and some optimism that it seems like the generations coming after us are a little more like, why are you all arguing? It seems to me that that's a little bit of it. There's a little bit more, like, for example, with driving, right? That there's this struggle right now between the people that are this automotive. We need to spend more time on roads and more parking. And other people that are going, well, we need more bike lanes and transit. And it feels to me that the next generation is, what are you talking about? I don't even want to drive. So we should just have transit. I need to be able to get in a bus and go somewhere. And so I do have a little bit of hope that some of those kind of what we should be investing in things will be different. But
I don't have many disagreements. I mean, with like I believe everybody on the county council right now, and I've disagreed strenuously with some members of the Frederick County Council, the current one. But I firmly believe that every single one of us is acting how he or she sees is in the best interest of Frederick County. Never doubt that for a second. We can have very strenuous disagreements. Obviously, I will advocate for what I believe in. But ultimately, the people put us there, and they put that particular group. There's 7 of us, and there'll be 7 different people by the end of this year. And we are there it's our job, I think, to reach out and try and find common ground as much as possible. But you obviously want to, advocate for what you want to believe, what you believe in, and what you think is best for the residents. But I believe everybody on the council has the best of intentions.
Okay, so I love finding out how people think, right? And so you've had a lot of life experience, and I think that no one is perfect. So what's something that you have, a mistake you've made, and how did you navigate through that? How did you, what'd you do after you realized it? Have you never made a mistake? I've had people say to me that they've never made a mistake, but
no,
I didn't believe them. But walk me through one of those experiences.
So when my son, we knew that my son was not meeting developmental milestones when he was about 3 years old. My sister-in-law was studying to be a nurse, and my mom, who was like, she had more experiences being a mom than I did at the time, and people were kind of trying to give me a heads up, like, well, we don't think that that he's meeting some milestones. So I had him evaluated at the time. I think they probably still call it by child find by Frederick County Public Schools, and he started kindergarten and preschool, and so we wanted to have him evaluated for additional services, and it was like one of our first IEP meetings, and I'm 23 years old. And I'm thinking, oh, this is nice. My son's going to get some extra help. This is great. So, and I go into this meeting, and they're saying to me, like, okay, they put all these papers down in front of me. We want to perform these tests, and you need to sign these papers, and these are the legal implications of these papers. And as somebody in my early 20s, I was just like, I am completely overwhelmed here. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm signing. And at the time, it took a lot for me to say, I'm not comfortable doing this. I'm not signing this. I need to do more research and find out what's going on here. And they, understandably, they're, people much older than I was at the time. They were kind of like, okay, well, you wanted this meeting. Like, what's going on here? And I felt like I'd wasted everybody's time. And I felt like I was delaying my son possibly getting extra help. But what I learned from that experience was, and to this day, I don't go into a meeting unprepared. I know what's going on, who's going to be there, what's their background, what are we doing, and that's what I tried to learn from that experience.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something to learn early, not to learn in your 40s or 50s.
Oh, I've made a few other ones, but that's
Okay, so juxtaposition to that, tell me something you're proud of, a moment in your life.
Oh, I'm really proud that I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree. I didn't think that it mattered as much as it did. I left college. I was like halfway through my junior year. I wasn't that far away. But then after my son was born and getting into all of that and into his when he was a toddler and school age, and then my daughter came along, I didn't think it was going to happen. And then I thought, this is really something that I want to finish. And it took everybody in the family, right? It's a family thing in terms of resources and time. I had to go back and start fresh with a new major because I had majored in theater, and I couldn't go back and, be in plays and do like that, anything like that. So I had to start over with a new major. I started over, I met with Mount St. Mary's. I had to take on the GPA that I had left my first year in at college, which was not an A, and I thought that felt right, though. That felt right that I had to go back and take that on, and I knew that I could never graduate summa cum laude because it just wasn't going to happen. But I did graduate magna cum laude, and I attended 5 institutions because I had to go back and take intro to a couple of classes and science that I'd been avoiding.
All at night.
All at night, and my kids had to they had to be, and I was like, on this. Thank goodness it was like cell phones were I could rely on a cell phone, whereas I couldn't when they were much smaller. So I'm proud that I went back and finished my bachelor's degree. That's something that I would have regretted not doing. It wasn't the most convenient thing. It wasn't the best way. Again, it took money away from other things that we were doing in our family, but it put me another step closer to doing what I am. It prepared me. You just don't know where life takes you, and you kind of have to. You plan for one thing, and something else happens, and you try and make the most of that, and keep moving. Feel like you keep generally moving in the right direction, and I think that that really those experiences really. Got me to where I am.
All right. How do people get a hold of you?
Oh, sure. Knapp for County Council, KNAPP, the number 4, countycouncil.com, or reach out to me. I'm on Facebook and happy to continue the conversation with anybody. Open door policy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.